Hey everyone, my name is Gabe Gurwin. I'm joined today by Dean Thompson. You're watching GamingAngelGabriel, and this is what we saw. So if you're new to the show, this is basically an aggregate. We take news stories from the gaming industry all around the web, compile them together, and give you our thoughts on them, how they're going to relate to the industry. So the show has three main segments. The first is a news segment. Like I said, we go over all of the big stories from the week. The second segment is the feature of the week, and this changes every single week. And then the third is kind of our shortest segment. It's about our impressions, the upcoming games we're playing, and what we're looking forward to. So we're going to jump right in. Now, two big releases have come out, both on Tuesday, and they were Medal of Honor Warfighter and Forza Horizon. Now, of course, Forza Horizon, published by Microsoft Studios, developed by Turn 10, is an Xbox exclusive, while Medal of Honor is available right now on the 360, the PS3, and the PC. So, we're going to talk about Medal of Honor Warfighter first. Now, I don't think Danger Close was expecting what happened when they released this game. Currently, it has an average 51, which on Metacritic signals mixed to average reviews. So, I mean, it's not a complete pan, but some of the biggest reviewers haven't been liking it very much. Dean, you've played a little bit of it. What have you thought so far?
I think that I think graphically the presentation is phenomenal. I only played the first level, and there's a kind of a partial tutorial, and you work your way into the ship docks, and you use a variety of weapons. Eventually, I get to a actual beachfront where you kind of approach this beach, which I thought was outstanding. I was really impressed with the graphic presentation. I thought that it was even a slight notch up from, at least with what I've seen so far, from the Battlefield 3, which I also enjoyed. I think it was an excellent use of the Frostbite engine. To me, the controls felt good. I didn't come across any of the bugs or glitches that I've heard other people talking about. But it looks really good so far. What happens, I got sucked into the Forza game, the Forza Horizon. I've just put a disproportionate amount of time into that lately, which is just unbelievable, a fantastic game. But as far as the Medal of Honor game, I'm anxious to play some more of it. And now after watching a few of the reviews of it, I'm even more intensified in sitting down with it and getting through the levels to try to validate or disvalidate any of the complaints that I've heard. I'm frankly shocked. I think it's a great game. I have my own opinions on it. I'm fairly neutral when it comes to politics, but I think that the political undertones of the game is having a real effect. I know some people, and I kind of know where their politics are, that really hate the game, and I think that might have some bearing on it, as it did with the first one. So it's a personal observation, and I could be way off the beam on that, but that's my perception on it.
Yeah, it's possible. So I have two reviews up. One's GameSpot, one's Destructoid. GameSpot was a little bit above the Metacritic. They gave it a 6, which is fair on their scale. And some of the good they said: Fireteam system gives the online multiplayer a sense of camaraderie, entertaining and inspired vehicular sequences. I think they're referring to the driving sequence, which is about 3 levels in, I think, and some atmospheric levels. Now that I definitely agree with. The one thing that this game does very well, in the campaign at least, is that they kind of pick and choose these missions that are inspired by actual events. And the one I just played, and this is the one I actually had a bug in that forced me to restart it, was like taking place during like a hurricane, and there was a huge flood. So you're through water most of the time. There's trees falling over from the wind. Very well done. The level design isn't that great, but the environments they created and just the way that they do that with effects and stuff is. Some of the bad that they said: ho-hum campaign fails to combine the usual tropes into a greater whole. Disjointed narrative populated by cookie-cutter characters, and set pieces lack the necessary thrills. From what I played so far, the cookie-cutter characters thing I think I'd have to agree with. So far, there's a guy who looks so much like Captain Price from the Modern Warfare series that every time I see him, I call him Captain Price in my head. And set pieces, it's a little too early for me to tell on that. Some of them have been really cool. That one I know you played in the very first level where you
it's over the top.
Where you yeah, it is. But you place that C4 on the truck, it drives in, you see that little explosion, and then the other explosion goes off a couple seconds later, and the crates start falling down. I thought that was well done. It was a little a little too gung-ho, I think, for the authentic thing they're going for, but I think it was done okay. So, they gave it a fair. I think, so far, I'd say that's probably about what I give it. I think I'd probably rate it a little bit higher, but Destructoid, their scale's a little bit different. They gave it a 5 out of 10, but a 5 out of 10 on the Destructoid scale is about the same as a 6 out of 10 on the GameSpot scale. They consider that kind of fair average. And Jim Sterling, as he's kind of known to do, if he doesn't like something, he uses very, very not offensive language, but very, very tough words on the games.
It's very cutting, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not thrilled with it, frankly. I like him, and I've always enjoyed his reviews, even on the games that I don't completely agree with him on as far as his review. But I thought that was a little over the top. But
yeah, it was. He called, I think this was his review, he called the campaign abysmal, but then went on to point out that it was just kind of ho-hum. It wasn't exactly abysmal.
To me, it points to, and I'll say it, I don't care what anyone thinks, they're jaded gamers and reviewers. How can you say a campaign this beautiful going into it is ho-hum? I mean, unless it really falls off the map, on at least by the second level. I thought it was incredible. I thought the beach scene, when you approach the beach, a little bit early in the first level, was really cool. To me, the set pieces, now I have watched quite a bit of footage, watched a little bit of someone else's playthrough on it, just to kind of get a heads up on it. I just don't see it being abysmal, and I certainly don't see it. If they're saying it's ho-hum, these people need to get off they have to get off the Prozac. That's all I can say.
Yeah. And we'll come back to this, actually, because our feature of the week is basically, can the modern brown and gray shooter, as I call it, survive when some other genres are going forward? But we're going to move on now. I'm going to let you mostly take care of this because it's not my specialty. Forza Horizon has been released, and I know you've been loving it. What have you heard about it from around the web?
I've watched virtually every review of it. I watched reviews of the actual demo. The demo gives you very little. You really have just a partial amount of the options available to use, and it gives you a kind of a taste of it. But man, when you get the whole game and see everything that you can do, the multiple different views when you're driving, the music. Now, I'm not a huge fan of some of the characters and the underlying story in it, you know, being a little bit older gamer, but I certainly appreciate it, and I wouldn't take anything away from the game, or I certainly wouldn't dock at any points for it. I watched one review from a colleague that we both enjoy, who gave it a 8.5, but kind of picked apart. You know, there's not a lot of life in the game. There's not a lot of people walking around. It seemed like kind of a dead environment.
Yeah,
I don't agree with that. It's a driving game. Number one, it's not going to be Grand Theft Auto 4 with people mumbling to themselves on the sidewalks and stuff like that. His other complaint was, yeah, they start you off with this Volkswagen. It's just really lackluster. I mean, dude, all of the games, they're driving games. You always start off with a bottom entry-level car. Midnight Club has been famous for that. You start off with a Chevy Cobalt or a little Volkswagen, you know, or something like that, and you have to work your way up. That's what makes it fun. If you start off with a $2 million Ferrari, you'd have no incentive to, frankly, try to earn your way through the game. So, but overall, other than that, I've liked every review that I've seen. I have a friend of mine that he's friends with one of the head developers over at GameVerb. He has an exclusive. He's one of the few people allowed to show gameplay of it, and had an early review of it, and it's phenomenal. IGN did a beautiful review of it, one of my favorites. It's for the most part has gotten great reviews. I don't really see anything negative on the game. All I can say is I've been mesmerized. I was so tired last night after work. I just wanted to kind of come home and pass on, maybe watch a little TV. I'll go ahead and put it on for a few minutes. And I was at 11:30 at night. I got to get up at 4:15 in the morning, and I'm up till almost midnight playing it. So it's very, very addictive. I was just playing with the cars, tinting the windows, lowering them. They have authentic rim companies from American Racing Wheels. You get BBS rims. You have OZ. All your favorite rim companies. You can actually pick real life rims, put them on the car. I'm really good with tire sizes and suspensions. I could pick and put in the size tires. It's all reflected with what you see. I paused the game in game when I had this Trans Am that I bought. Was able to go into a photo mode. You can position the camera from any angle, zoom in, play with the shutter speed. It's just unbelievable. Then you can upload those to Forza.com and then go on the internet, put them on your Facebook. It even gives you an app right there on the TV to go right to Facebook with it, with your favorite scenes. It's just a fantastic, very user friendly, extremely good for people. It may not be into the whole racing sim thing. They just want to play the game, and it's perfect for that. If you want to go sim, you can shut off all the assists, make it as difficult as you want, which also ups the overall. You have like a monetary system where the races you get certain amounts of money, which you can upgrade your cars or save to buy new cars. So it's a very, very well thought out, great game. It's a very strange game. It's a hybrid game that crosses over arcade racing and sim. It's like right on the fence. Could go either way. So this is going to be a fantastic new direction for Forza. To me, it's the finest racing game I have ever played, bar none.
Well, so that's a good testimonial, I guess. I think, as an open world game, it's doing something really different. I think some of those complaints you saw about, there's not many people driving around. I think it's just kind of because of the style of the game.
Because people driving around, you just don't see people on the streets to where you can hit them like you could with like Driver San Francisco.
Yeah, but it seems like you're on a lot of highways and stuff, so that makes sense. It's more about the spectacle.
It's a rural area out in Colorado, so you're in Red Rock Canyons. You're down to these autumn leaves going through these beautiful valleys. Mm-hmm. There's a big epic kind of a Coachella Valley kind of a music festival thing going on, so that you really have a great mixture. A couple little kind of dusty little mining towns you go through, but kind of like from the movie Vanishing Point. It doesn't really show a lot of big urban cities that you're driving through like Grand Theft Auto.
Which, for this kind of game, I think works out. I saw a video of a guy racing against like a biplane that looked pretty cool. It would like round corners and it couldn't turn very fast, so he'd be driving along, it would come up to him, but then it would overshoot and then he'd regain the lead when it tried to turn. So
it's very challenging. I did one in a 1970 Mustang against a P-51 Mustang that was kind of a World War II era plane, and I barely beat him. It was really close. Sometimes he kind of beats you to the finish line, and because he has wider arcs that he has to do. There's even a hot air balloon race where you're going kind of on these dirt roads and you got to try to keep up with these hot air balloons. So it's very well thought out. They really thought ahead and tried to put some innovative things in it that just made it different and to stand aside from anything else that's out there.
It looked really good. I'm not usually a racing guy, but I saw a couple videos of it and I kept watching it just because I really liked the environments. That was the big thing. I liked the very, very, very good draw distance. Mm-hmm. You could tell that the developers aren't really used to drawing people so much, but the environments, the mountainsides, everything, the scope of it was great. So our third story of the day that we're moving back to Dishonored. I don't know, Dean, how far have you gotten in the game since you bought it?
Again, almost like Medal of Honor, only the first level. It's one that what I really want to do is I want to wait till I have a week off from work. Yeah, so I'm going to sit down, not shave for a week, and I'm going to play the whole damn campaign. So I'm actually looking forward to they have some upcoming DLC, which we had mentioned earlier, which I'm anxious to get, maybe play that with it if it comes out in time.
Yeah, and it won't take you. It's like about 10 hours it took me. But, so there are going to be 3 add-on packs, I guess. It says the first one, this is on IGN, will be released in December, and it's called the Dishonored Dunwall City Trials DLC. It's going to be $5. And it's going to be more like a challenge and skills kind of thing as opposed to missions where you're going to be doing kind of, I guess almost like the Spec Ops things and like a Call of Duty, that kind of thing, testing different skills. Read a little thing about it here, and I quote, "Some additional details have also been released for the second add-on for Dishonored due next year, which will apparently be a story-driven campaign. The pack is targeted for next spring and will focus on Dowd, the leader of a group of supernatural assassins called the Whalers. It'll add new locations within Dunwall, as well as powers, weapons, and gadgets that you'll be able to liberate from Dowd's clutches." It's gonna be really sweet. This game, I really think they better be setting it up for a franchise, because by the time you get to the end, without spoiling anything for anyone, there are some unanswered questions, and you'll be ready to go in for some more. So, Dishonored, definitely in the running for Game of the Year. I said before, Dishonored, Assassin's Creed 3, Halo 4, probably the 3 that are most likely to take those awards. And after Dishonored is showing, and the universal love by critics and gamers alike, it is definitely going to be up there. Okay, so next we talked a lot about the Wii U last week, but one thing we didn't talk about was that some information that just came out. Nintendo is going to be selling the Wii U at a loss. Now, most developers, or excuse me, hardware manufacturers, they sell their systems at a loss when they come out. It's just how it works. Sony, I think Sony even had to with that Blu-ray player being so new when the PS3 came out. Microsoft did. But Nintendo usually doesn't. They usually like to make a profit on their systems. They tried to do it with the 3DS, and after it did not sell well at the $250 price point, they moved it down to $170, and then the system started picking up to the point where they did make a profit. But this is going to be the first home console that they're going to be planning to sell at a loss. If you're getting the deluxe edition, it's going to be $350. If you're getting the basic, it's $300. Nintendo has been struggling. They had their first, I think the New York Times reported, their first loss ever, fiscal loss ever, last year. This is a company that started in the 1800s, so a bit of a worry, especially with all these games coming out for the current systems. Hopefully the Wii U picks up. And this is again coming from IGN, but it says earnings forecast lowered as sales fell 6.8% compared to last year. Now, obviously, that's not that much, but the 3DS doing well, not doing super well, and obviously the Wii's fallen off the face of the earth. They cut the price again, I think to like $100 or something for the holiday season on the Wii. I mean, if you don't have a Wii now, I'm guessing you're probably not going to get one.
Exactly.
Yeah, I hope Nintendo pulls it around. As much as I want to say, I am angry about some of the decisions they made, not business decisions, but kind of game and creative decisions. I do hope they pull it around, because they initially, when the NES came out, they saved the video game industry. There was no video game industry. It fell off the face of the earth after the crash in the early 80s, and they brought it back.
That's true.
Obviously, we don't have that kind of a problem now, but it could get there eventually. Sales are down pretty much every year. They're lowering.
It's no longer the only game in town. Back then, it was the Commodore 64 and the NES. There really wasn't a whole lot going on. But now they've got, in my opinion, they really need to get up to speed with the technology to even come close to the PS3 and the Xbox 360, for crying out loud. I mean, it just seems that when I look at like the original GoldenEye Reloaded for the Wii, it looked very good. In fact, it was a great, almost a quantum leap on that system, but it just pales in comparison with the one that just came out a year ago. Yeah, that came out on the Xbox 360.
I mean, the Wii U is a system that's coming out 6 years after the PS3, 7 years after the 360. I don't think it should be too much to ask for to have the graphics be a far bit better.
Not at all.
Those systems.
No, exactly.
Now, even though they aren't, Nintendo is selling the system and losing money on every system they sell. So obviously, that means a lot of money's going into that gamepad, I guess. But it's something to keep an eye on. I encourage you all, if you have the extra cash to spend, go out and buy one, because it seems like they have a pretty good selection of launch games, good games coming soon, and it's always good to support a company that's in trouble, and does look like they're trying to do some new ideas.
I agree.
So, on our very first episode, we talked about Resident Evil 6 and how it got very polarized reception. It was getting 9s and 8s from some people, and it was getting 2s and 3s from other outlets. But now, one of those problems that Capcom got from pretty much everyone is going to be fixed, and that was that the camera was just super far in and didn't allow you to see very much. With the next update, in addition to allowing you to play with another player in Ada Wong's campaign, which will now be unlocked at the outset, so you can make some sense of it all, the camera is going to be adjustable, so you're going to be actually zoom it back quite a bit more. I'm looking at a picture right now that shows.
I think that's a common complaint, even from a few friends of mine that like the game or kind of it's kind of split on whether it's a good or a bad game. But that's one of the common denominators that I've heard, is that that camera is just it's in the way, and it's also somewhat clunky.
Yeah, I think and the clunkiness, I think, just comes from the fact that it's so close up. And if some people like that, obviously it'll still be an option, but giving people the ability to do this, I think, is a smart move. In addition, they're going to be adding the no hope difficulty level, and this is a quote: from Game Informer. The no-hope difficulty level will be added above the existing levels for players who want an extreme challenge. So, hopefully this is something that, works out pretty well. I know that zombie, obviously, it's a very, very busy genre. There's a lot of games. Zombie U, I just saw a couple of different previews that they were glowing about it, saying it looks like it's finally taking us back to the old school survival horror games where a lot of times you'll be running away because you don't have enough ammo and you won't be seeing a zillion zombies. You'll just be seeing a couple.
And that's one of the elements that I like. In fact, I bought the original Xbox just to play it was called Land of the Dead Road to Fiddler's Green. It was only available on PC or on Xbox.
I've never heard of it.
So I had a PS2 at the time. The Metacritic score on that is right in the basement. But it was a great game. It really captured what it would be like to be in a survival. You had a couple clips with very few bullets. Sometimes you had to run, and very scary, very intense. I had a psychotic episode, I think, playing it back a long time ago. But if I would get a Wii U, actually, just to play that game. I think it looks really intriguing.
Yeah, it does look very good. And what you said, I know DayZ, a lot of people say it's kind of like that. There will be so many zombies that if you fire a shot, you'll attract so many that you better just run. Related topic, there's another game that's been developed for a while. They claim it's not because of DayZ, called the War Z. I'm sure you've seen it. One of the developers for that game used some very offensive language that I'm not going to repeat to talk about some campers and things in that game. But this developer, I'm not sure how much ground he has to stand on, because on his resume, one of the games that he was a programmer for was Big Rigs Off-the-Road Racing.
Oh, God, I remember that one, actually.
That is the lowest rated game of all time on Metacritic. It has like a 7 or something. It's ridiculously low. So it's barely even a game. There's no racing because the other person, driver doesn't even make it to the finish line ever. There's no collision detection.
Horrible, yeah.
Yeah. So,
if you look up the word god awful inside of Webster's dictionary, there's actually a picture of the game box.
Really? Well, so take his words with a less than a grain of salt, I guess. All right, next story. This one, my jaw kind of dropped because I did not think this could happen. Minecraft has now knocked Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 off of the most active list on Xbox 360.
Wow.
So there are more unique users for Minecraft Xbox 360 Edition than Modern Warfare 3. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're not a Minecraft player. I'm just going to...
I haven't played it yet. I have a friend of mine that just jumped on the bandwagon now that it's on the Xbox. And he said, it actually has almost a survival horror element to it. Because you have to, I guess, at a certain time of day, you got to go inside. They have these creepers that are out, and he said it's an intense experience. So I thought that was kind of an interesting dynamic that he apparently brought up on it. But it seems to be very successful. I do like the fact that you can build your own castles and buildings and go underground. You can pretty much do what you want to do. I'm not real big on the whole Lego thing and this over pixelated kind of a rudimentary look to it. But if it's popular and people like it, it gives people the freedom to do what they want to do, then I'm certainly all for it.
Mm-hmm. I've played it a little bit. I haven't played it on my computer, but my friend has it. One of the cool things for it, modders absolutely love it. And they made a Legend of Zelda adventure for it, so you can play basically some of the dungeons from Ocarina of Time and Link to the Past kind of mixed together.
I heard that. Someone else built the USS Enterprise, I think, also with it.
Yeah,
it's pretty incredulous, but it looks pretty neat anyway.
It's all sorts of things. People love the game, and hopefully Notch is working on something, I guess, a lot different for his next title, but it says it has now sold over 4 million copies since launch this year. And this is a game, it's been around for a while because it was in alpha and then beta state, and people were playing it like it was, already released. I think I kind of like the low-res kind of blocky graphics they went with, only because when you're building stuff, it kind of helps you line stuff up, I guess.
Sure, no, that makes sense.
So, yeah, Minecraft has knocked the number one game, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, off of the top of Xbox Live. And
That's unbelievable.
I'm sure we're going to have about, maybe 2.5 weeks before it goes back down to number 2, because there's another game coming out that's going to reclaim that. But and our last story, actually our second to last story of the day, because I have something that just came out. This is from The Escapist. Assassin's Creed 3, which is coming out this Tuesday, is going to have DLC that will be in an alternate universe, and this will send send Connor to try to overtake King Washington. That's right, King Washington. He's decided he doesn't want to be president. He wants to be king of America. And the promotional art for this has the most evil look on his face ever. He has the American flag like draped over a throne, and he has this really kind of pointy, kind of crude looking crown.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about this DLC actually, but I won't say too much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're gonna. It's not like a it's not part of the story. It's completely alternate history.
Sure,
that they're doing just
I
for fun. I know. Also, I think it's a PS3 exclusive. You're going to be able to do some Benedict Arnold missions. But yeah, I like what they do with this. They kind of mix in history, and of course, with a widely American audience, this is going to, I guess, people are going to remember this stuff, and it's going to be kind of interesting to see what it would be like.
Controversial, yeah. I mean, I grew up as, back in, I guess, New England, and I had a picture of George Washington crossing the Delaware in my room, and so it's hard for me to demonize some of my childhood heroes, but it looks very interesting, and I take my hat off to him for at least kind of thinking outside the box and trying to come up with something that's innovative and new that kind of inspires people to think and I guess wonder what if. So
yeah, it is a what if. I mean, this obviously he's not going to be a bad guy in the actual game, but when I actually saw this story the first time, I think I yelled yes really loud just because I thought it was so funny.
Oh, the graphics look fantastic. Everything I've seen in that game, I might actually have to break down and get into it. My father-in-law is already way ahead of me. I gave him the money to buy it as a gift. He's all excited. So
yeah, I'm very excited about Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation, which is on the PS Vita, where you play as a half African-American, half French aristocrat lady in New Orleans. And it's going to be different, I guess. It's no longer Desmond for that game. It's going to be like a simulation run by the Templar Agency, their front, Abstergo. So very, very excited for Assassin's Creed 3, and obviously I just started playing Medal of Honor Warfighter very, very recently, so I'll have to kind of split my time between the two. Now, our last story of the day, and I think I have some iced tea left in the fridge, I'll have to pour it out. X-Play and Attack of the Show are both being canceled by G4. Now, earlier this year, Adam Sessler had a contractual dispute with them, and he left. He left X-Play. Kevin Pereira left, seemingly on good terms, to go work on his company that he's doing, some kind of media company. I think kind of similar to the Nerdist that Chris Hardwick does. But this came as a bit of a shock. I knew that they said they were rebranding themselves, possibly with a name change, but I made a statement on Facebook, and I hold by it. I will not watch G4 ever again.
Good.
I don't understand what they're doing here, because there are so many channels. What they want to go into like this GQ kind of sophisticated man.
Yeah, they're emulating something that is going to cost them ultimately in the end.
But there are so many and I like nothing against that, but there are so many channels you can go to that'll give you that. G4 was the only video game channel on the internet, purely video game. Back in the day when I first found it, there were shows like Cinematech that was all trailers.
Yes.
A lot of times for games that people didn't even really know about. There was a show called Judgment Day, if you remember that, with Tommy Tallarico.
I do, actually, yeah.
That's how I started getting into his stuff. I wish he'd do something like that again, because he was great on that show. And there was the Arena, I guess it was called, which was all competitive gameplay. There was Cheat, which lasted a long time and ended up becoming a segment on X-Play. So to completely rebrand yourself as nothing to do with your past, I think is a bad idea. The only video game stuff left on TV is on Spike, and it's with Jeff Keighley. Now, I think Jeff Keighley is a good journalist, but he's also a dick.
Yeah.
If you guys want to search Angry Joe's thing on this, no, I mean, I'm not completely in favor of the way Angry Joe handled himself in the interview, but Jeff Keighley was just very, very rude to him, and I don't really want to support someone like that. During E3, I guess I'll have to, because there's not going to be anything on G4. It's going to be all, how to wax your chest hair. But
oh God,
so
not me.
No, not me at all. Not that I have any to wax, but if I did, I wouldn't. So yeah, it's depressing for me. I mean, I knew that it wasn't the channel it used to be, but I used to watch X-Play every day. I loved Adam Sessler. I loved Morgan Webb. Even when Sessler left, I liked Blair Herter enough with kind of his self-loathing personality that he had.
Sure.
And honestly, I hope that Sessler and Webb kind of reunite and do something different. Don't think it'll be on TV, though. I think it's going to be on the internet. I think that's just the way it's going to be. It's where you can search out your own stuff. If they don't want to do this because they don't think they're going to be getting enough viewers, then put it on the internet where someone can type in a search term and find your program. So I really... this made me kind of... It made me kind of depressed. I was very upset to hear about this. And I don't think it means very much about video games. It's just a different direction. There's so many channels now on YouTube and various websites where you can go to see your information. I guess they didn't feel it was profitable anymore, but I think it's going to come back to bite them, because if there's anything less profitable than, pure video game programming, it's doing something that other channels are already doing.
Yeah, it's really a shame. It's too bad. Especially with Sessler. I almost wonder if maybe he kind of saw the writing on the wall and bailed. That's my impression anyway. But
he was what got me into video games journalism. I actually wrote a thing for my public speaking class where we had to do like a thing of tribute to someone. And even though I don't agree with him on everything, I wrote it about how he had influenced me to get into this sort of thing, because his jokes, his personality was kind of similar to mine. And yeah, it's very, very sad. I hope to see stuff from those guys soon, though.
Who knows? Maybe he'll come back bigger and stronger than ever on some other channel or some other program.
Yeah, I hope so. He's been all over the place since then. He was on Spike, actually, during their G4 coverage, working with Keeley, giving his kind of analysis along with Peter Molyneux. So, and then he was on Machinima. He was on the Radio Respawn show. I think I heard him. He was in a podcast for the Nerdist, one of their shows.
I think I saw that. Yeah, I think I've seen that one.
Kumail Nanjiani, he was freaking hilarious. So, yeah. We're gonna move on to our.
This is review of Crackdown. That's still one of my favorites to this day.
He had no shame, but it really worked for him. He had one. I think the best. I don't even remember what game it was for. It was from some survival horror game where he noticed a person would explode and then their scream would echo for like 5 seconds afterwards, and he'd go, "What was that? The fleshy chunks?" So now we're going to move on to our feature of the week, and this is going back to Medal of Honor Warfighter. Simple, vague question. We do that on purpose, that we talk about it for a while, and that's, is there still a place for the modern gray and brown shooter now that it seems with the lack of both critical and, as analysts have pointed out, financial success of Medal of Honor Warfighter, and kind of the moving forward with Call of Duty and games like it, can a game set in modern day in the Middle East survive, in 2012 and going forward? Now,
it's an interesting it's an interesting topic. I mean, I have mixed feelings, almost like Mark Bussler over at Classic Gamer. He also has mixed feelings about showing or having a war depicted that we're currently in.
Yeah.
While we're sitting playing a video game and people are actually dying, and I'm fascinated with war. I'm fascinated with politics, but I don't know if it can survive. I mean, I have a fascination with it with FPS games, and I can't get enough. So as long as they're willing to keep making them, I don't care if they're red, white, and blue, if they're brown and gray. I'm just interested in playing something new that's an FPS game. I frankly miss a lot of the World War II games. That's why when Sniper Elite V2 came out, I was all over. They have new DLC coming out for that looks fantastic, wonderful. It's a wonderful trailer for it. In fact,
yeah, that game looks like a big improvement over the first one. But I think the problem, it may not. In part, I think it is political, undertones with this. With the war we're currently in, but I think it's kind of like with World War II. It really took off in like '99. That there's just so many ways you can do things. I think this is kind of underscored in Medal of Honor Warfighter, because you know how in Call of Duty, how you breach doors in slow motion, you shoot people as you go in. You do that around 4 or 5 times every mission. I'm not exaggerating at all. And that's
I've already done it a few times.
And it's just, I've done it so many times before. If I hadn't, I'd probably enjoy it more. But I think there's just so many ways you can do things. My hats go off to the developers trying something new, and I think Medal of Honor, it used to be a very, very prestigious franchise, and now a lot of people don't look at it that way anymore. I think even though it was definitely a competent shooter, Warfighter, and it is fun, and there are definitely some good moments. I think it's just the lack of any risk taking that really kind of puts some people off. Now, it is not a 4 or a 5. It's like a 6.5 or a 7 to me, because
from what I've seen and trying to reading, I'm trying to read between the lines and see it through the perspective of a lot of these game reviewers. I could see that. I think that would be fair to give it a 6.7 or a 6.5 or maybe a 7.5 tops, based on some of the glitches that it has. Now, I went through a horrible bug, very similar to what you went through on the first one, trying virtually 20 times to go redo a checkpoint. My dude was supposed to proceed the way through the caves. He wouldn't go, and I had to redo the whole level all over again. It's the only way I could beat it and get through it.
Oh, yeah.
And it really bothered me. And I was hoping this one, they had kind of perfected that and got rid of all of these game-breaking bugs or these kind of AI glitches or whatever. So I'm a little disheartened over that. But I think visually it's so arresting that you can't give it a bad score. I think you could give it an average one. I think fair would really be cheating the game. Now, I have a couple friends that have just shied away from multiplayer, and they're just really burned out on the whole Call of Duty. One of them has his own review channel that actually has just millions of hits. And he's testing it against the old Black Ops and doing comparisons of multiplayer. He loves it. He says it's a very nice community that you can be a part in and play the multiplayer. He likes some of the aspects and the dynamics of it versus a COD, multiplayer. So it's everyone's going to have their preference. Now, for me, I'm more of a single player person, so I'm going to play the fairly short campaign, and that's going to be the end of it. Maybe I'll probably I'll probably play it again on hard or something like that. So although I'm intrigued with the multiplayer, I have two friends that kind of told me, dude, you really should try it out. So I'm interested. I might actually try the multiplayer out on this one. I mean, I got the huge strategy guide with all the breakdown on the classes and everything, so it looks good.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that it's that they put more focus into the multiplayer than they did the single player. So we're gonna have to, wait and see if moving forward. I don't think the game's gonna sell very well. We talked about this before, but I don't know. I'm thinking it might be time for the genre of first person shooters to just try something a little bit different. I was talking with you earlier in the week. I played a Civil War game. It was like a History Channel Civil War game.
I remember that review, yeah.
And the game was okay, but I think if a developer like Danger Close or like Infinity Ward, one of those developers, put this big budget into a Civil War game where you're playing as, an officer riding on a horse with a saber and commanding troops.
They did that in Bound in Blood. Call of Juarez, Bound in Blood. You start off in the Civil War, and I loved it. And then it kind of got away from that. It kind of segued out to the Old West as they were wanted for, I guess, desertion on the earlier levels. But it was nice. I took my hat off to him for doing something different and at least attempting to do have a new twist on a first-person shooter. So.
Yeah, and it wouldn't just be like a rescan either, because the game mechanics in something Civil War related would be so much different. So hopefully something like that happens. I know when Modern Warfare, remember guys, this was about 5 years ago now, when Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare launched. That game, it was heralded as like the end to World War II shooters, finally something refreshing, and now Call of Duty's become kind of like the epitome of, we need something new. So I think maybe they'll be the guys to come around and give it to us. Black Ops 2, obviously, it's not a huge departure. It's like 30 years or about 25 years in the future. But I think even just some of the game mechanics they're adding in with that game, some of the real-time strategy elements are going to help. Warfighter is one of only like two kind of big multiplayer modern shooters released this year. The other one being Ghost Recon Future Soldier back in May, which I really like. It's not a fantastic game, but it's really good. So. But even actually, Ghost Recon Future Soldier was set about 20 to 22 years in advance, but it still had kind of some of those real world modern types of conflicts.
Sure.
So I don't know if you let us know what you think. Where do you want the first person shooter genre to go? Because if we can get a consensus here, obviously, if you have money to pay for the game you want. There will be developers willing to make it, hopefully. I know there is still a market for modern games, but I think maybe it's a good thing if Warfighter doesn't sell maybe as well as EA hoped, because it'll let them know, hey, we want something a little bit different. We want something a little bit refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly do World War I. Actually, the one I'm looking forward to is the gorgeous-looking Enemy Front that is in development right now. First-person shooter, very interesting HUD options, very different from any other first-person shooter World War II game that I've seen. But again, it's like a Sniper Elite. You're behind enemy lines by yourself, trying to improvise, using enemies' weapons, sneak in and out as best you can. It has some stealth elements for sure, but it has that Crytek engine, and man, does it look good. It really looks nice. So I'm actually looking forward to more World War II, but I'm kind of a war historian, so I find it more interesting personally, but I'm an older dude that likes that stuff.
I always wondered why they didn't actually move, and this is going to be kind of the discussion. I always wondered kind of why didn't they ever, any developer think to make a World War I game? They played World War II to death, but World War I with the trench warfare, and this was the time where they were using mustard gas.
Tanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like early technology, which is fascinating. I think it would really lend itself to a new game, IP.
You can answer a history question. The Geneva Convention was after World War I, right?
Yes.
It was in response to it. So yeah, I think a lot of those things, it would get brutal. It would probably generate a lot of buzz, but not just for that reason, but just because of the gameplay options and the story material. You read All Quiet on the Western Front?
Yeah, I did. Actually, I had to in high school. It was part of our required reading.
Yeah,
today it would be a joke. I won't even say it, but
that's how I read it too.
Yeah, we had to read that actually when I was in high school.
Yeah, I think I read that in the 10th. Yeah, I read it in the 10th grade because my honors English class, we were reading it in that class, and then my history class, we would kind of talk about some of the stuff from that book because
it was very gripping. I remember it really had an impact on me at the time.
Yeah, it's from the perspective of a German soldier actually, but he's kind of thrust in. He's young. We saw a movie too. There's been a few. I think it was in the 70s. We're going way off topic here, but yeah, good movie if you want to go watch it. I think there's a few of them. And it would just be a great setting, I think. A lot of different brutal military technology, early machine guns, and many different conflicts going on at that same time period between many different countries. So
the American Revolution, which of course you're going to see that coming up soon here in Assassin's Creed 3, like the movie Patriot. I mean, there's all kinds of smaller skirmishes, but certainly World War I. I mean, it really was a world war. There's so many places you could go. You could virtually have like a World at War Call of Duty based on World War I. I think it would be a great idea. I for one would line up, at a midnight release for that one. But
so would I. I really there's only so many wars. I think Vietnam. There's
not enough Vietnam. I love Vietnam stories. Now I remember for the regular Xbox they had the first shell shock before it went in this bizarre zombie direction that. Trails of Blood. I forget what the second one was, but the first one was really good, and it was hard. It was a very tough game, and it really captured the horrors of Vietnam. And I have some good friends that actually survived Vietnam, and I would stay up for hours listening to their stories. It's a fascinating war. I don't agree, actually, with a lot of the politics that went on behind the war, but it's an interesting war, and it's fairly recent. It could certainly bring in a lot of the interesting music from that period. So I don't know why we don't see more Vietnam films. There's been a couple games on the regular Xbox, but not too many on this console. That's actually why I bought Black Ops, was because I kept seeing the Vietnam footage, and they had these Rolling Stone songs, and I went to the midnight release. 3.5 hours I waited to get that game. I was so excited, and I played through it the first night, and the second night replayed it on the hardened level.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. One thing I saw people mentioning is jungles are very hard to recreate or to create and look well. I think it's kind of pushed developers off from it. I'm not sure that's quite a valid excuse.
I think that's a weak excuse. There's some great examples of jungles that I've seen even recently, frankly.
Like Crysis, they do it very well. I think if they use the CryEngine, that could work pretty well. But yeah, obviously, we saw what used to be a Vietnam story made into a video game, and before that it was a different story. Heart of Darkness became Apocalypse Now, and then that was the inspiration for Spec Ops: The Line. So,
it's my favorite Vietnam movie is Apocalypse Now. I mean, there's a lot more that are more realistic as far as what went down in the war, but that particular portrayal of it is my absolute favorite.
Oh yeah, I love that movie. I love the psychological elements. The one thing I realized later that kind of upset me was, that scene near the end where they're slaughtering the cows?
Yes.
They actually did that.
Oh, there's a lot of things that they did, including Martin Sheen using cocaine during the scene where he cut his hand. He actually cut his hand, and
He
was out of
his mind.
control and almost had a heart attack. I mean,
Yeah,
but that's back before CGI, when people went in full bore. These are old school actors, directors, producers. You don't even want to know some of the stuff that happened with Marlon Brando. I mean, it's just insane.
Yeah, he showed up.
It was an interesting film. There's a whole movie about the making of the movie.
I saw it.
That is well worth the time.
Yeah, I saw that movie. It's really good. It shows kind of the parallels between the psychological torment undergone by the characters in the movie and guys like Francis Ford Coppola, who, God,
put up his own money, risked losing his ranch, his home, everything, because he believed in the film so much. When's the last time you've seen that in Hollywood? Not very often.
I like it better than The Godfather. I know my dad loves The Godfather. He loves...
I do too. I have the whole series on Blu-ray.
He loves crime movies. His favorite movie ever, he always says, is Once Upon a Time in America, the long version. But I actually, out of Coppola's movies, Apocalypse Now is my personal favorite. But yeah, what if we got more, on the subject kind of this, more psychological thrillers? If you're going to stay in this time period, shooters with modern undertones, you know, there's this thing being tapped. Obviously, Warfighter went for this kind of solemn, character-driven piece, but they used kind of, I guess, standard kind of characters, real soldiers with real experiences. They kept pushing authentic, but what if we got not real soldiers? What if we got, you know, these soldiers that have these problems that we aren't used to? I think it could bring something fresh in the industry, because you won't know what's coming in the game. You kind of know the thought patterns of the soldiers in Warfighter and Call of Duty and Battlefield, but in a game, I don't know, where maybe
wasn't there a game I just saw in Game Informer recently? They were going to do, and it was it called, not Homefront, it was some kind of a game about splinter cells or terrorism within the country, or the country's going to be divided, and you had a bunch of right-wingers coming up, rising up, and having a big fight. It was a big epic production, and I haven't heard too much about it recently.
Maybe Rainbow Six Patriots? Is that what you're thinking of?
I think that might be it. Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
It sounded very intriguing, actually. I was really curious to hear more about it.
Yeah, we can talk about this. I was just researching it the other day. Basically, Rainbow Six Patriots, the plot is this group called the True Patriots. They're kind of like the Occupy group. They're going after banks and stuff, and we're not going to get into the political undertones of it.
Sure, I understand.
But it's it looks very interesting, but development has been a problem. We don't really know why, but David Sears, the original creative director, and a lot of his team have been moved on to other things. He's working for a totally different company doing something now. Hopefully it works out okay. They said they're still going after his original vision. But the game, after making, you know, this big impression at E3 2011, just like some other games we've seen like BioShock Infinite, completely absent from E3 2012.
Very strange, yeah, very odd.
And a lot of people are speculating that this game is no longer going to be on the 360 and the PS3, and that it will be a title for next-gen systems. And I'm going to buy into that. I think that's probably true.
It could very well. It's at that period in time where it's more than likely. So
yeah, that's Rainbow Six Patriots. Like, again, doing something completely different, bringing in real events, but also hitting close to home. And obviously...
almost like Homefront, which to me, because of the massive hype, I was all for it. I couldn't wait to buy that game.
Mm-hmm.
I pre-ordered that sucker and paid it off ahead of time, and then had this kind of a lackluster, empty feeling when it was suddenly over. But
yeah, I think the problem with Homefront was kind of as much as, you know, the North Koreans could be an issue. The writer he basically took his movie that he had written before Red Dawn and kind of changed it to North Koreans and made a
twist on it, and it seemed a little incredulous for me, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to happen.
Can't even muster the energy to tie his shoe, let alone invade our country. You know, so
if you are in North Korea and you're somehow listening to this, that is not a challenge.
No, it's not.
Don't try that.
We like our Golden Gate Bridge. Don't take it from us, please.
So yeah, I'm excited to see what we have. It looks like most developers are finally moving in a direction of creativity, because gamers are finally, I think, a lot of them, quite frankly, fed up with stagnation. Month over month, Modern Warfare 3 has sold fewer units than Black Ops, even though it was the biggest entertainment launch of all time. And I suspect that Black Ops 2 is going to go back on top of that, because they are trying new things. So let us know what you think. What would you like to see in a video game, in the shooter, in the modern shooter, in a sci-fi shooter, but in something that would follow a general progression of events as they look like they're happening? I'm not talking like an alternate universe. I'm talking like 50 years down the road or 100 years down the road, that kind of a timeline. What would you guys like to see? Personally, I told you I'd love to see a Civil War game, and I'd also like to see some psychological elements, kind of like Spec Ops: The Line did, but maybe with a bigger budget, more production.
Oh,
values.
I love that game, Spec Ops: The Line. Yeah, I've actually got. I think I've got 3 levels left to play. It's almost done. Probably another couple hours, and I'll have it wrapped up.
Oh yeah, that's the type of game though that I'd have to have like an Easter bunny and someone to give me a hug, waiting for me as soon as I finished it, because I'd be so depressed.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a tough. It's a very hard game to play. I had to shut it off on at least one occasion. It leaves you in kind of a dark place. You wouldn't want to watch The Elephant Man after playing it. You end up with a rusty razor blade on your wrist.
I am not an animal. I am a human being.
That's right.
So, yeah.
John Hurt from Alien, yeah.
Yeah, that's our feature. Did did David Lynch direct that movie?
Yes,
I think he did.
Yes, he certainly did. It's a gorgeous film. I'm a huge David Lynch fan. I have all of his movies and a lot of rare ones.
Yeah, my brother is obsessed. He loves Blue Velvet, which is a very strange movie. Speaking of Apocalypse Now,
I love it. It's one of my absolute favorites.
Yeah, I'm not as obsessed with David Lynch as my brother, but he watches like Twin Peaks. He watches a ton of that.
I have the whole series. I got the first couple seasons. Yeah.
So now we're going to be moving on to our last segment. This is the same segment that we do pretty much every week, and this is what are we currently playing and what are we looking forward to either on the next week or the next about week and a half. So I'm going to start this off. Basically, I've been playing Medal of Honor Warfighter as of very recently, and even though I am kind of disappointed with some of the lack of innovation, it's competent, and it kind of satisfies my shooter fix. Lately, after I played Dishonored, for some reason I didn't feel like playing it again right away. I guess I wanted to go back to it later, so I just haven't played very much before very recently when I picked up Medal of Honor Warfighter. Now that's going to change because a game I'm very, very looking forward to is Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation on the PS Vita. And why am I looking forward to that more than Assassin's Creed 3? Nothing against Assassin's Creed 3 proper on the 360, but the PS Vita is in major need of a big AAA title, and this, every indication is it's going to be the one to finally sell some big units. I did not understand that was going to come out so suggestively. Some big numbers. That's better.
Yep.
What are you looking forward to?
Well, yeah, I'm heavily into the Forza Horizon now. I'm anxious, hopefully sometime tomorrow, to start playing more of the Medal of Honor game. I had the Doom 3 BFG that I've gone a little ways into that one just to see what it was like. I've already played the game back on the regular Xbox, so it was more of just I wanted to support id Software by actually having the game. But
sure,
they have the Need for Speed Most Wanted, which I have paid off in my pre-order. I'm going to pick that up Tuesday. I'm very excited. I have a lot of Machinima partners have got advanced copies, so 3 of my friends have already played and reviewed their early experience with it, and it's a brutally tough game, though.
Yeah, it looks
very hard.
It looked a lot of people were saying kind of Need for Speed in name only because it's kind of a mix between Need for Speed, the older kind of underground games, and the Burnout series, because Criterion is developing for it.
Yes.
Even though they said that they're not done making the Burnout series. So it does look very good, and that's actually, it seems, what EA is going with. I know with the disappointing sales numbers for sure that Medal of Honor Warfighter is going to have, and with a lot of disappointment in BioWare with a game like The Old Republic, which is kind of moving to a pseudo free-to-play format, it looks like they're going to be putting a lot of emphasis on not on Forza, on the opposite of Forza, on Need for Speed Most Wanted. I think there's room for both games. Need for Speed looks like it's a little bit more traditional street racing, while Forza is obviously kind of a hybrid game.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it actually looks good. It's very arcadey. It's, from what I understand from the early reviews, it's almost a perfect cross between the Hot Pursuit game, which was also tougher than a cheap steak, really hard, and Burnout Paradise, which were both made by the Criterion Games. So it looks very good. It has a lot of wet roads, and there'll be different environments. It's an enormous city. A lot of that is going to be repetition of trying to memorize the tracks to get through it. I mean, you make one mistake, and it's almost impossible to win the race. So it's going to be a hard game. There's no difficulty setting either. So you go into it with certain games up front, you'll know whether they're easy, medium, or hard. And from what I've heard, most of them are really tough. So.
That would annoy me.
A lot of people will. I've already have a friend of mine. I told him this. He said, well, I may just pass on it. Then I don't know if I'm up to it.
Yeah, I think it'll do well. I think that'll at least help EA out a little bit. Not that they really, need help. They're the biggest game developer on the planet, so publisher actually.
I like them personally. Yeah.
Yeah,
they make some really good games.
I have nothing against their games. It's some of their practices that I'm not a big fan of, but I do like a lot of their series. I'm extremely excited for Crysis 3 when that comes out next year. Dead Space isn't really a series I've ever really gotten into, but Dead Space 3 looks good. Some people are complaining that maybe it's not as scary as the last games, but because of the co-op feature. But we're just gonna have to wait and see. So, guys, that was it. This is the 4th episode of What We Saw. My name is Gabe Gurwin. You're watching Gaming Angel Gabriel, and I'm with Dean Thompson.
Enjoy your games, guys.